Welcome, everyone. We have the sports writers here with us, Phil Stacy, Matt Williams with us from the Salem News and Gloucester Times, whatever.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we're welcome here, and let's get going. And I think we were talking on Monday evening here, and we got some football ahead of us. We played some football last weekend. We have not talked a lot about Marblehead football this year, and I know there's a game probably you guys were not at, and neither was I, but got to give Marblehead credit. They popped up with that road win, knocking off the number 3 seeded team, I guess it was, and Middleborough, and now they're playing down at Grafton this Friday night, or out at Grafton this Friday night, and so D4 Marblehead with the big upset after closing out the year with 3 straight wins, including a win their last regular season game against Danvers. So let's begin there. Kind of a neat story for Marblehead football, which was not having a great year until several weeks ago.
I've been wrong. Marblehead all. Go ahead, Willie. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I've been wrong. I feel like a Marblehead all year. I kept thinking they were going to win in September, and it didn't happen for whatever reason. And then I thought, well, it's just going to be one of those years, for them. And I think I picked them to lose a couple of times, including last week in October, and of course they won. So they're back playing well. It's certainly not a classic Marblehead team. There isn't a war horse or a bell cow in the backfield or some dominant two-way player. They just have a lot of solid players, and guys have gotten healthy at the right time. They were missing 3 captains, I think, at one point. But, Chris DeWitt is back. Andy Palm is back. Christian Pacheco is back. They're getting great work out of the 2 quarterbacks, Colt Wales and Finn Gallup. I think they both threw a touchdown pass a week. Gallup ran for another one. They're getting defensive stops. One thing that hasn't changed is they have a fantastic coaching staff. So now that their players are coached up, to use the terminology, and they are back healthy, and they're getting those senior leaders, back and playing both ways and all, they're playing their best football. And can they win again this weekend? I'm sure they can. I mean, they're on the roll right now. They're not expected to do anything, as they weren't last week. They'll be underdogs this week, but they can go in there, roll the dice, and see what happens.
Yeah.
And they've got a fantastic defense too. It sounds like Chris DeWitt had a monster game defensively, gave Middleborough all kinds of problems. And, that's the thing. I mean, Marblehead's defense has really buttoned things up. As Phil mentioned, they're healthy. And, when you have a great defense, you don't have to drop 40 points on offense, right? You can be efficient. You can be, take advantage of your opportunities. I mean, they got a big touchdown right before halftime, which I believe they did in their win against Danvers too, if I'm not mistaken. So
exactly. Yep.
A team that's not taking any opportunities for granted, right? They get the ball, they want to do something with it, and that speaks to their confidence, and speaks to the confidence that the coaches have in the players, right? Like a lot of teams that maybe struggle on offense might take a knee or not try to force the issue, but Marblehead's saying no. I mean, there's 5 seconds on the clock. We're going to try to do something, and we're making it happen, and we're creating momentum that way. So I say good for them. That confidence is contagious, as we've seen. And, credit to those seniors like DeWitt and Palmer and Scogland, who at 0-4 did not quit. I mean, that's the benefit of this system, whatever you think of it. At 0-4, your season's not over. It's just beginning. And they got in, and now they have an opportunity to keep winning and create some extra games and chase a state championship as well as potentially the NEC Dun Championship. So, good for them. I mean, it's really, a credit to those guys and everything that they've been able to kind of put aside and kind of keep grinding, keep practicing, improve as the season goes along. I mean, that's the name of the game, right? You want to be better in November than you were in September, and that's certainly been the case for Marblehead.
I'm glad you brought up the tournament. I just want to make a point here that I was thinking of earlier today. It is what it is, and I think there's a lot of great things about it. I think, at the end, you actually get the 2 best teams or the 4 best teams left, and all that usually shakes out pretty well. One thing, though, when I brought this to my attention with a couple of emails I got today, it was like, well, how come? And it wasn't complaining. It was more just wondering, like, well, how come you guys didn't cover, somebody asked me why we didn't cover Marblehead on Friday night. I got another question as to why we didn't do this or that or whatever. You know, I think a lot of it is a byproduct of, I mean, we've had changes obviously at our newspaper recently where we're down to 3 people. But also, you know, the games are so spread out that it's difficult to get to everything we want to get to. Say, like, you know, Beverly boys soccer had a great win on the road last night, unexpected upset. You know, couldn't get there. Just not enough, not enough time in the week for us to get there. So you know, that's one thing about the tournament. I do miss the North tournament in that regard, and that everything was, you know, within driving distance. And even if there was the same volume of games, we could pick and choose a little bit easier what we got to and what we maybe tried to get by phone or I guess nowadays by email. So it's just something I was thinking of where I got a couple of inquiries today about it. I mean, trust me when I say I wish we could be everywhere. I mean, even with the football playoffs, it still seems, you know, for somebody who's been doing this 34 years, it seems like so bizarre to me that we don't have a body at every single playoff football game. But that is the reality of our jobs these days. We do the best we can, and we try to get to everything we can. But unfortunately, the boundaries of this tournament, where it's stretching across the state, just don't allow us to do that.
Yeah, and I was going to say that that Marblehead defense was pretty effective against Danvers in that last game. Nick and I were both at that game, and Danvers was really just kind of shut down in that second half for sure. They couldn't get anything going against that Marblehead team, and in hindsight, now we know why. They were doing pretty good. You know, they've got it together here now. And well, you're right.
It's a great segue, Bill. Speaking of which, Phil, tell us what's going on with this Danvers team. I mean, this is 2 weeks in a row and probably 4 times, maybe 5 times in 9 games when they have not been able to move the ball offensively at all in that second half. You know, did they get away? I heard some fans at the girls' soccer game wondering if maybe they got away from the pass in the second half, where Flosine was 10 of 10 in the first half, and some of the fans were grumbling about this. I'm not saying that they're correct, but I'm just curious, like, you know, this Danvers team, if they're going to go to the Super Bowl and win 2 more playoff games, I mean, you know, they're going to have to play better in that second half than they did on Friday night, which, you know, by many accounts could have easily been an upset loss.
Yeah, they got away with one. There's no question about that. Ryan Nolan would be the first one to tell you that, the head coach for Danvers. They were out physical. They were out toughed, and they didn't play like a team that wanted it more. They played like a team that, okay, we're up 20-0. This is cruise control, you know, and it wasn't that way. And all the credit in the world to Blackstone Valley. You know, none of those kids are going on to play college ball. They're going to be, you know, they go to school for a trade. They're going to be electricians and plumbers and carpenters and whatnot. They had a kid on the sidelines, and you couldn't help but notice him in the pregame warmups. He stood taller than his teammates. They're wearing helmets, and he wasn't. And he stood over them wearing a big flannel shirt. I mean, he looked like Paul Bunyan from the Danvers sidelines looking over. 6'7". I asked him afterwards. He said he's 315 pounds. He got an injury in preseason, tore an ACL out for the year.
Oh, that's terrible.
Poor kid was crying after the game. I just, you know, I went over and I said to him, geez, I think you would have made a big difference tonight. And he, you know, thank you and all that. But yeah, you know, Danvers is I don't know if frustrating is the right word, although it might be the most apt. They're a very peculiar team to figure out, because when they play well, I really feel like they can play with just about anybody in that division. When they don't, they can lose to any of these playoff teams. And when I say they don't, it's really small things, because they have look at the talent that they have. They have a 4-year starter at quarterback. They have a 4-year starter in the backfield, who's one of the best players in the conference. They have 3 great receivers, 4 if you want to include Gasanowski in there. They've got a strong line. They've got a good ball hawking defense. They tend to lose focus. They tend to make mistakes that hurt themselves. And I think there are times they don't stay aggressive enough when they have the lead. And maybe that shoots to your point, Willie, like, hey, let's keep throwing the ball. Let's not get away. Now, sometimes I think the precision passes that were hitting so well in that first half, these little quick outs and jet screens and things like that, got away from that a little bit in the second half with some more downfield stuff that didn't work as well. I don't know. It was a win that almost felt like a loss. And it's really hard to say that about a playoff game. I feel like, especially a 1-point playoff game, but they were up 20-0 and won because Blackstone Valley missed a field goal on the last play of the game.
And I think if you're Danvers, you hope that, okay, this is playoffs, lesson learned. Sometimes it takes,
Sure.
You survive in advance. And sometimes that's the best thing that happens to a team is to have a situation like that, in an early round and then have it not repeat itself going forward. Right. And hey, let's be honest, for the armchair quarterbacks out there criticizing the play calling. I mean, hey, Blackstone Valley hit a win too, right? Like you can't just keep necessarily doing the same pass plays over and over again.
That's
the defense is going to adjust, right? So it's not as easy as it looks sometimes.
In fairness, it's a beat up line. They're missing 2 starting linemen, and that's not the same as. I don't want to compare apples and oranges here, but that's not the same if St. John's Prep loses 2 offensive linemen. They're losing 2 starters, but they got depth that a school the size of Danvers, they can fill those holes, but it's going to be a drop off.
And
it gets felt.
The other team comes out loaded for bear looking to stop the run, and you surprise them with a few passes, right? And then they adjust, and then you try to run, right? So I mean, it's not always as easy as keep doing what's been working. There are adjustments and counter adjustments and whatnot that sometimes go unnoticed.
I also think just from a neutral perspective, and as you do, Willie, I love to watch the games along the sidelines whenever possible. I noticed that, we're into November now, and it's we've used this phrase in the past here, but it's big boy football. And you got to not only be playing your best, as you referred to when we were speaking about Marblehead, but you have to bring in a third and especially the fourth quarter. Like, it doesn't matter how well you play in the first quarter or the first half. Like, you got to raise up. You got to know that your opponent is going to push back, and you have to accept and exceed that challenge. I didn't see that the way that I know, having watched Danvers, they're capable of doing. Mm-hmm. So I do think we haven't seen their best all-around game yet. Maybe that's coming this weekend. Maybe it won't. They have the capability to play better than they have. I think they played the schedule the way they did for a reason, to play the Tewksburys and the Salems. And I know Reading didn't have a great year, but, traditionally Reading is very good to start the season. So they were in a position. They set themselves up to be playoff ready. Had a hiccup against Marblehead. Okay, wasn't the playoffs. Had a real hiccup last week, but survived it. Now it's a huge test. They have to bring it. They have to have a good week of practice, and they have to play their best game of the season Friday night.
I talked to Coach Nolan, and in Marblehead they didn't pass that much. People were probably thinking maybe they should be passing more against Marblehead because they weren't able to run the ball at times in the game. But so it sounded like last week they were passing the ball a lot more. And I think Coach Nolan was telling me that it's kind of a trade-off. Teams make adjustments for what you're doing, and they got to make adjustments to counter that and so on. So you're right. And and the other thing too, Phil, I looked at their scores today, and they don't score a lot of points.
No, they don't. I mean,
they don't have that game where they score 45 points or one of those games. They're not that team. This year.
No, but conversely, they don't give up a lot either.
No, I'm absolutely right. So they got to be in a game. They still got to get 20 points to win. They can't win.
Yeah. And Dedham looks very similar to Danvers from what I've been able to ascertain. Quarterback has some gaudy numbers, but it seems like maybe it's a case of receivers making yardage after the catch that inflate those.
But that works, so that's great.
Well, hey, yeah, it works. I mean, it's not like he's heaving 50-yard bombs, but if it's a 7-yard out and the guy turns into a 37-yard reception, who's counting, right? I mean,
right.
Quick and agile. Defensive ends look strong. Linebackers are maybe a little smaller, but fast and athletic. So, nothing that we've said already here tonight is going to change. Danvers has to play its best game of the season if they want to advance in the postseason.
They have not They have not scored 30 points in a game, nor have their opponents. They got to be the only team in our area
Yeah.
and one of the only teams in the state that have not had a 30 on the scoreboard one way or the other in any given game this season. So that's just an interesting little factoid I noticed on the sheet here.
Because I looked at that score 20-19 last week, and I'm thinking, they played a lot of close games. But, it's not that they played close games because, Willie, you're looking at the scores there. They're not all that close. I mean, yeah, there's some touchdown games, 6-7 points, but there's some also larger scores, where it's not that close. But yet, on the other hand, you get the feeling with them because they've been in all their games that they're win or lose. It seems like that they play close games, but that was the closest one right there last week for sure, 20-19.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's move on. So,
and that's with an overtime game that was decided by a 2-point rush too. So they've
there
played
you go. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was an overtime, and that's how the season started, right? With the overtime game, I think, right? Yeah.
That was week 3 against Reading.
Game first win, but still,
Okay.
I mean, yeah, they've definitely been through it. They shouldn't have frayed nerves over there, that's for sure.
No. Well, where do you want to go for football? I mean, we got to just mention St. John's Prep. We did a lot of soccer and other sports to lead off the show last week. Going back to football here this week, the Prep. You're in these playoffs. You're the number 1 seed. You play number 16, and they breezed in their opening game. There's no question about it. They'll be playing BC High.
I can't imagine it's going to be much different this week. I mean, Willie saw them play BC High 2 weeks ago in Dorchester, and that was what 34-6. Willie.
They were. I mean, I will say, BC's quarterback is pretty good. I know Brian St. Pierre respects him quite a bit. There were some throws to be made that they kind of missed, and I'm sure that the Prep will hone in on that this week and try to correct that. But the Prep did not play very crisply on offense in that game either. I think they feel like there were a lot more plays to be made for them as well. So I would say if BC scores more points than they did the first time, there's a decent chance that Prep will too, and the end result will end up the same.
And BC High has traditionally had some big bodies up front. Did you happen to notice one way or the other about that this year?
Similar to St. John's. I mean, I wouldn't say, overwhelming by any means. Okay. Nothing that really stood out in that regard.
How about Peabody, Willie, getting another home game? I mean, very impressive last week. I mean, that last year's playoff loss had to be weighing on their minds going into this game. They come out, they score in every quarter, they shut out Arlington. I'm guessing they had to be thrilled with all 3 phases of the game. Now, how do they carry it over into this week with another home game?
Well, they still got to be better on offense, I think. Again, like it was 10-0 deep into the second quarter and, 17, I think at half, or was it 10 or 13 at half? I don't know, something like that. But, they're still, Coach Brett says it every week, like, we're winning these games, but like, we're not clicking everything on offense. Like there's still plays out there that we want to have that can be better and be more consistent. And the defense is just covering up, whatever those warts may exist. So, against a good team like Barnstable, I think you have to take advantage of your possessions and not necessarily, in other words, sometimes if it turns into a shootout, you got to get touchdowns, not field goals, right? Or you got to stop the other team outright. I thought the young quarterback, Luke Maglione, was very impressive. Had a really tough game against Salem. Came out, completed his first 7 passes for 130 something yards and 2 touchdown passes. His first touchdown pass came after he lost some yardage, which I was very impressed by. Peabody was, I think it was a 3-0 game, and they had first and goal, had a loss of yards on a run, ran an option play. He kind of ran the wrong way, lost about 10 yards, and you're thinking, oh, here we go again. We're going to have to kick another field goal. And, he was on the run, made a motion to his receiver to cut up a different route. The kid did it. He hit him for a 25-yard touchdown pass, and we're off and running. And I was just really impressed by that in the sense that, like, if you're a sophomore coming off a tough game and then you have a tough play, you could say, oh, here we go again. I'm going to have another tough game. Instead, he shook it off. He throws a touchdown pass, and they're on their way to a 35-0 win. So, hey, this is a team that's never, ever in 120 years of football won 2 playoff games in the same season, right? So what time like the present would it be to do that? I think Barnstable's a good team. They're a spread team. They average a lot of points. They haven't played very many teams off the Cape, so you don't know how that's going to translate. They got a tough running back in France, is his last name. He's tough, but he's not big. So, that lines up well. It's not like the Fian kid that came and ran him over. And the other thing that coach mentioned was that, in terms of last year, like, all those returning starters are 25, 30 pounds heavier, 2, 3 inches taller. Like, they've seen that before. They're not going to be intimidated if they go against a big team again. So that's the idea. I mean, I think there's a healthy respect for Barnstable. They're big, they're good. But hey, you got it at home. And with all due respect to Barnstable, they may be good, but they're not as good as Catholic Memorial or King Philip or Marshfield. So if you're Peabody, you feel like you had a pretty good draw. You show up, play your best football, try to, if it's a coin toss game, and I think it is 50-50, and you get it at home, hey, if you can win this game, go to 10-0 for the first time in 29 years and take your chances against the monster the following week and see what happens. I mean, at that point, you're probably playing with house money. So they've put themselves in a really good situation. I mean, I think if you look at everything that they graduated from a 10-win team that didn't win a playoff game last year to be sitting here at 9-0 with a home game and a winnable home game with an opportunity to go to a state semifinal for the first time ever. I mean, I think you would have taken that, right? I mean, that's probably a little bit of a surprise to some people out there, considering everything that they lost and kind of the way that their program was headed, without all those guys that were on the team last year, prior to that. So you really got to take your hat off to these guys. I mean, they've done a tremendous job to put themselves in this position. And, if they show up and play well, I think they can keep it going. I mean, Barnstable's good. If they don't play well, they're going to be in trouble. But that's all you can ask for is an opportunity to show up and play well, right?
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, and you got Dominic Scalise there with the what, he had 2 field goals last week, right? So
right, I mean, he's a weapon. That's
first and third quarters, right? Yeah, when you said you want to get touchdowns and not field goals, I mean, you're right, but I mean, they have a sure thing as a kicker as we have around here in terms of
right.
And it does help them to take control of games. I mean, it's not a bad thing. Like, they scored 4 touchdowns and 2 field goals. That's points on 6 different possessions, right? So, I mean, that's nothing to scoff at. And the other thing that's a big advantage for them is the special teams. Scalise's ability to punt, to flip the field, and also teams are like really afraid to kick it to Batista on punts. And a lot of teams have been punting it out of bounds, like, 10, 15-yard punts, and they've had tremendous field position. They only need 1 first down to put this kid Scalise in field goal range. I mean, sometimes I think, like, and I talked to a few coaches about this, outside the area that aren't going against them. And it's like, sometimes just kick it as far as you can and hope your guys get there, because these high school kids, they're not NFL punters. Like, you're trying to get them to angle it, and you got the wind and this and that. They're panicking and shanking the kicks, and it's been a real advantage for Peabody so far in terms of that field position. I mean, Arlington, Salem to some degree, I think Gloucester and Winthrop before that, like, you might be better off just kicking it deep, and if he returns it, because, or even just go for it then, right? But field position has been a huge thing for them, and part of that is Scalise, and part of that is Batista.
All right. We should just jump and touch on the other sports quickly in our remaining time. We don't have a ton of time left here.
Shout out to Salem too. First playoff win.
I'm sorry. Not my bad. Yeah. Let's do that. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Same thing that Willie said. Here's a school that in over 130 years of football has never won 2 playoff games in one season. Looking to do so. Give up 20 points in the fourth quarter last week after having a big lead. You wonder if that was a blessing in disguise, maybe along the same lines of what I was saying about Danvers, where you have to tighten up in that fourth quarter, and your foe is going to keep on coming no matter what the score is. I mean, they're playing for their playoff lives at that point, so they're going to keep coming. I know it was a little bit fluky. It was, Willie, back-to-back onside kicks, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think they got 3.
Was it 3? I mean,
I think because they had the third one, and Corey Grimes got the interception in the end zone to end the game. So they actually had the ball again. Or was it 2?
I mean, 3, you know what the odds of that are? Like, at any level of football, to get 3
it's crazy
kicks. It's unbelievable.
Who was the guy for Atlanta that did that? Was it Young Ho Koo or something like that? He got
the kicker. Yeah, that's right.
But
they're going to be playing. They're back at home this week. 6:30 against Spelman. Now, Spelman presents a really interesting opposition for Salem. I'm not sure that they've played a team quite like Spelman. I mean, certainly Salem is 7-2. They could be 9-0 except for 2 points. They got 1 point losses to both Winthrop on a fluky long touchdown, and then that unbelievable game against Peabody where they went for 2 at the end and came up just short. So they could very well be 9-0. But the Spelman team comes in and they bring something powerful. They run the ball really hard. They know how to put up points. I believe they've scored 40 or more points 3 different times this year, including last week against St. Mary's, 41-30. I want to say they beat them. And that was after having been shut out by St. Mary's 2 weeks ago. So they obviously made some great adjustments in a 2-week span and flipped the script there. So they're not going to be coming in.
I think they had an injury, Phil, in that first St. Mary's game.
Okay.
And
well,
now
that makes sense.
Now the QB was back last week, I'm guessing. I think that
he was okay.
Yeah.
Well, they put up 90 points. I remember reading the last 2 games. Now, Arlington Catholic, I know, is no great shakes. But really the only legit loss they've had was to Feehan, who was powerful, as we know. They doubled up Bishop Fenwick 28-14. Like I said, they put up a lot of points. They have over 250 points this season. Can Salem serve hold at home? Can Salem use the schedule they've played this year in the conference, those tight October games they've played against Winthrop and Peabody, and work them to their advantage? Can they get their skill players the ball in traffic? Can the line hold and give the quarterback time to throw the ball? Can they get after it defensively and force 3 and outs? A lot of ifs here we're saying, but we know how good Salem can be. We know that this is the best season that they've had in 24 years. Can they keep it going and get to a state semifinal? Huge, huge game for the Salem High football program this Friday night. It's at home. It's theirs to win. It's just up to them to do it now.
Yeah. I think you're right, though, mentioning these games the last couple of weeks. So, they got to make you better, I think. You know what I mean? As long as they're healthy. Yeah, they got to make you better,
I mean, because I think among the public schools we have, you could argue that Salem has the most athletes per team. You could argue some other schools, but I think Salem would be right there in terms of Corey Grimes at quarterback, who they can roll out of the backfield, whether it's Azuna, who they can throw, Azuna, Feld, Rocco Ryan, Albert Poolhouse. I mean, it just goes
Logan
on. Abood, right. They have a lot of athletes, and they have playmakers on both sides of the ball. Those guys in the trenches get the job done. They can ball hawk defensively. A lot of guys to the helmet when they're getting after the ball. So if Salem can keep its composure, play their game plan, and really bring their best in the fourth quarter when things are going to be tight, because I think it's going to be a tight game. I would see this being a high-scoring tight game, maybe similar to what they faced against Lynn Classical at the Bowl. They can prevail and see themselves. If you're playing the weekend before Thanksgiving, you've had a great year, and that's what Salem has a chance to do right now. A win Friday night, as I said, would be a huge, huge win for this program, not only for this year, but I feel like this is going to reverberate for years to come, like young guys that want to come into the program, seeing what's going on here, that fever of not just a great regular season, but a playoff, 2 playoff wins at home. You pack Bertram twice, you get all kinds of fans there, and you reward your fans and your program with another win. I mean, that would be the ultimate for Salem.
Yeah, I agree entirely.
They've done a lot this year. They've achieved a lot.
It's been a great story. It really has.
Great story.
Sometimes teams fold under those expectations, and Salem has risen up. They haven't let these 2 losses derail them. They've stayed resilient, and here's another chance to show that resiliency and resolve and fight.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, this time a year ago, we were saying, they're, they beat up on some bad teams, whatever, and they've gone out and shown everybody, not the case. We're for real, and they're still doing it. So it's good for them for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, the Peabody score. I mean, let's not forget. I mean, that there was a game that if Peabody walked out of there with a 10-point win, up a few divisions and undefeated themselves, no one would have been surprised at that. No one would have been surprised at that.
Nope.
except for maybe the Salem would have been surprised maybe, but they know more than we do, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
But
And again, like as I said, that's the best team they're going to play. Like with all respect to Linfield and Norwell and everybody else, there's nobody left on their schedule that's as good as Peabody. So they got to feel really, really good about that.
It would have been interesting if we got a October regular season matchup between Salem and Marblehead, where Marblehead was going good. If Marblehead had used that, week 7 bye, if they could have somehow worked it out where Salem was available, that would have been an interesting matchup. I think it would have benefited both teams. I mean, hey, it didn't happen, but whatever. Just throwing it out there.
We don't really have time to go into it, but in the non-playoff games this weekend, there are some pretty interesting game matchups this week.
Crazy that we have like a 1 o'clock and a 3 o'clock game on Friday. I love those times.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, well it's the holiday, right?
Yeah,
right, yeah.
Yeah, no school in a lot of places. Yeah,
we have Veterans Day off, so yeah. All right, gentlemen, what do we have here? Just a few more minutes. Anything else you guys want to touch on?
Let's talk about girls soccer, Willie. I mean, we've got some great teams going right now. You're the expert. Masco, Hamilton, Wenham, Danvers, they're all playing well so far, rolling in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I would shout out Georgia Prouty at Danvers, the NEC MVP. It's not very often you get your 50th point of the season and your 100th point of your career on the same play, right? The numbers just happen to work out that way. That she had 50 coming into the year or whatever it was, and boom, you've got both milestones. So they were actually tied 1-1 with St. Mary's and then exploded for 5 goals, and they got to go to Tantasqua now, for their second round game. So we'll see how that goes. But just a great season for Prouty. I mean, that's one of the first 50-point scorers we've had around here in over 10 years, and I can only think of 3 or 4 ever, in my time here in the last 20 years, and there certainly couldn't have been too many before that. So just an amazing season for Georgia. Masco, continues to roll. They destroyed Somerset Berkeley in the first round. They've yet to allow a goal at home all year, and they'll go to Essex Tech for their second round game. So I guess we'll say they've yet to allow a goal in the town of Middleton, perhaps this year. Could be the stat that we use. They've played home games. This will be the 4th different field where they've played home games, and they've just won them all. So nice job for them. They got certainly their sights set on a state title and bigger things. And then Hamilton Wenham, same deal, still undefeated. 12 shutouts in 17 games, and their next round is going to be on Wednesday. We should shout out Ipswich, which, as we record this, is tied in overtime with number 7 Northbridge, way out west. So, the Tigers, one of these teams that, if you go by the football standards, wouldn't have been in the tournament, right? Probably didn't get the minimum. They had 5 wins, get in on the power ranking. They win their prelim game, and now they're maybe, going to pull off an upset. So people can check that out in the area roundup after they watch the podcast. But, nice work by Ipswich if that's the case. And Beverly, too, shout out to Coach Kristen Simpson. They finally won a playoff game. The curse is over. 9 straight losses in the tournament, and they beat North Andover on PKs. We're eliminated by a really good Bishop Feian team on the road, but I think in her first year back, to get that monkey off their back playoff-wise, give them some momentum going into next year, that's just nice to see them, not have to worry about that streak anymore.
Sounds good. Well, great stuff, guys. Again, and I guess we should stop right here and let you guys get back to work and get ready for the paper or whatever, and we'll see you again.
One quick note, Bill, if I can, just
absolutely.
In our friends inside the winter, the fall sports, our volleyball friends have what should be a pretty good matchup, assuming that the 2-time defending state champions from Ipswich take care of Oxford on Tuesday night at the Thomas Roundy Gymnasium, 6 p.m. if you're keeping score. That should set up a state quarterfinal matchup against Hamilton Wenham, who the Tigers beat twice this year, but obviously great rivalry between those 2 neighboring schools. And that would certainly set the tone for a a really good Elite Eight matchup. So we, having a stake vested interest in both schools, would certainly love for that to happen.
Yeah, don't play it on Friday, guys, because ain't nobody going to be there.
Yeah. Thursday, much better.
Yeah, that'd be my advice.
That's the Elliott Roundy, Jim. Phil.
Yeah,
The
what did I
Elliott
say?
Roundy. Thomas Roundy.
Oh my God, geez, poor Tommy.
His
Sorry.
son, Tom. His
Alive
son,
and well.
Thomas.
Sorry, Tom
Yeah.
Elliott. My God.
I'm glad we were able to drop Tom's name in here. That worked out good.
Yeah. Hey,
But,
you know what? I don't want to do it in that way to make people think that he's got a memorial gym named after him. But yeah.
No. But he would be glad to have his dad, Elliott Roundy, mentioned and so
The legend.
on.
Imagine making that ride from Marblehead to Ipswich every day for as long as Elliott did. I mean, God love him.
I know. In I got a chance to meet him many times. Elliott Roundy. Yeah. What a worker. I mean, just and full of positive energy. Just cared about kids and the school. And you're right. Marblehead to Ipswich.
I think what Tom and his mother would have liked to hear most about their dad/husband is that he was a gentleman above all else. Great guy.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
No doubt about it.
Nice way to end on Elliott Roundy. Gentlemen, we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.